Every time I go to share this, it doesn't share though. What if I add? Hit add, right? There he is.
What's going on?
Not much. I gotta turn my volume up. There
Yeah,
we
me
go.
too.
I
I was
can't
going
hear
to
you.
I was going to click on the computer and I forgot that we got to do it on the phone.
Yeah, maybe down the line here we'll get set up and wait. I don't know. If we do it, more towards the when it gets colder out, I'll be indoors, and then we'll kind of set up our computers and make it work better that way. Maybe
Yeah.
have a little bit better signal too, because I get some complaints say, "Hey, it's breaking up." It's like, dude, I got full bars. I don't know what to tell you. It's Verizon.
Yeah. No,
Yep.
I know. And it's hard because like it's fine for us, but then it breaks up for people watching or something apparently.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Hey, we do what we can around here, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Did you do anything fun over the 4th? Did you go racing last weekend?
Yeah, we the 4th we went to the just an amusement park, and they had great fireworks and this and that. And yes, I went racing. That was that's going to be a. I'm going to talk about some of that in Sunday's video there, but I'm not giving out any spoilers or anything. But
There you go.
I think the title of the video is going to be. I won't say that you didn't warn me, because I I was trying to keep my level of aggression to a minimum, as not to make people mad. I'm new to this, clone racing thing and this and that. And I tell you what, I'm kind of over getting used up. It is what it is, and no hard feelings. It's all hard racing and everything. I was, I'm trying to mind my P's and Q's, and I'm getting shuffled and moved and this and that. And then finally, as it turns out, I'm a super nice guy, but if you move me enough, I tend to get mad. And then
Fair
I
enough.
start driving like everybody else. At one point in time, I was cleaned out. I run a guy down, a kid down, and we're friends and everything. And I run him down, and I passed him. And the very next corner, he just sent it and sent me. And it was, he's young. He'll learn eventually, but I just didn't want to talk to him. I got back to my pits, and they were parked right next to me, and I wasn't having it. It's like, I'll get over it, dude, but not right now. Please, not
Yeah.
right now. I was.
Yeah. No, I mean,
Yep.
it's a valid subject. It's been that way for a while, back when I was still racing, and it doesn't matter whether it's a kid or whether it's at the highest level. I mean, the guys that race at the high level, they race together a lot, so they show each other a little more respect. And like, I didn't race as much, but when I did, if I was competitive, I expected to be driven the same way. And there was several times me and Armstrong got into it more than anybody. And
Yeah.
and I told him one time, and I did. He used me up at Liberty for a state race one time. And I said, "You do it again, you ain't gonna have a go kart to ride." And he thought I don't know if he thought I was kidding or not, but he had to go get him a new go kart the next week.
Yeah.
So after that, it was fine. Never really had another incident. But yeah, it shouldn't have to get to that, and that's not the right way to do things. But it I don't know what would help, I guess, is the best
Right.
way to explain that, right? Because it's not,
Yep.
even at that level, like we're professionals. We do like, we do it pretty much professionally at that point.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter whether you do it professionally, you do it for hobby. Sportsmanship and respect and all that should be a norm, right? And it
Yeah.
used to be, and it's also in different parts of the country. So like I noticed, because I did get the opportunity to travel a good bit. It depends on where you race at too.
Yeah.
It's gotten more aggressive everywhere. Don't get me wrong, but I
Right.
noticed even different parts of the country. Um, the respect level and the cleanliness of the driving is different depending on where you go.
Yep.
So I think the
Yeah.
money brought a lot of that in, to be honest, the
Oh
higher
yeah.
payout. Um, but it still shouldn't be that way. You should
Yeah.
still be able to go out there and race and respect somebody. And I
Yep.
think that all trickles back to not having an organization that kind of sets the precedent. They talk in the drivers meeting, they can say what they want, but everybody knows,
Yeah.
like, at the end of the night, the last checker flag flies, there ain't
Yep.
nothing else they're going somewhere else next week. What does it matter?
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
that's
Where if you've got it coming
and
from
you
an
know,
organization level, it's
oh yeah.
every week it's getting enforced.
Yep. I don't want to throw too much shade at the kid because he is a kid, and he
Yeah,
was he. I think he thought he could make it stick, and it did not stick.
yeah.
And it
And
was just
there's
it
an
was more
element
of
of
the
that
point of
too. Yeah,
I spent so much time working him cleanly. You know, I nuzzled him a little on the straightaway, just kind of like, hey, you know, I'm here just to let you know a pass might be coming, type of thing. But when I passed him, I didn't touch him, and it was I think he thought he and I know because we're parked one next to one another. He was one or two teeth down from me on the rear gear, so he had a giant, you know, shot coming into the corner, and I think that's what happened. Like I got up off the corner better than he did, and I think he had a heck of a run. He tucked down underneath, and he thought it was going to stick, and it did not. It was
yeah,
just,
yeah.
boy, oh boy, it's just, you know, I was gonna, you know, we'll see. I got just looking at my side panels. I'm like, damn man, I have my UAS wedge as much as in UAS, I'm considered pretty aggressive. Like, you know, I've had some discussions with people about me driving over my head or, you know, this or that or nuzzling people out of the way, what have you. But you can look at my wedge body and there's barely donuts on it. And then
Right.
I've run like 6 races in the clone series now, and I'm
Destroyed.
wow.
Oh yeah.
Yep,
That,
yep,
that's yeah, I think some of that's par for the course with clone
yeah,
racing and just
yep,
the tighter competition,
yes,
less horsepower to be able to make moves and
yep. And
that. So
I'll also throw this out there that you know, we've discussed this before. A little older chassis. I'm on older tires. When you're not up front, you know it's dicier back there, and that's
right.
partially my, you know, financially, you know, a little bit of my fault. I'm back in the hornet's nest, so it is
Yeah.
what it is. And like I said, no hate, no shade or anything like that. Just man, I haven't driven like this in a very long time, and it's just like, man, I don't like being this aggressive, but it's like, all right, well, you hit me, so guess what, buddy?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, we used to have, it seems like it used to vary depending on what tracks you went to as well. But now just less tracks, everybody's kind of racing together all the time.
yep,
It's definitely a little more rough than it used to be. But I still, like I said, think a lot of if you want to call them issues, if you want to call them problems, if you want to call them whatever, a lot of the things that are going on in our racing, I think it all goes back to that. We don't have that North Star. We don't have that organization that just
yeah.
kind of set guidance, set the
Here's
way. And
this
it's
is the law.
even yeah, but even and it don't have to be like even like that. It could just be from a leadership perspective. It could just be
Right.
people like us talking about it, right? But having a
Yep.
bigger that big central voice, like it is the monument in our sport saying, hey, let's act like civilized people. Let's drive
Right.
like we got a brain, and let's
Yep.
not go out there and tear everybody's stuff up, right? So
Yep.
I think that would go a long way because you really don't see there is really nobody preaching, for lack of better words,
Right.
for people to do better. So they just
Yeah.
continue to they're always going to push it, right? I mean, we're racers, so
Yep. Well,
if they're
that's
not, nothing's going to be done about it. We're just going to keep doing it.
yeah. It's you see, well, you see it in NASCAR too. You know, I watch
Yeah,
NASCAR just like everybody else, but the young crop of kids coming up, there's less and less respect there. And it's,
yeah,
you know, they're fast. They're brutally fast, but sometimes they just use people up when they don't really have to. It's just like, man, you could be a little more patient there, and you know, maybe, you know, make it. And don't get me wrong, that's dude, I'm not a not sinner. Because I see a hole, I'm like, ooh, will my nose fit in there? And
yeah,
no, it didn't. You know, you know,
yeah,
I never stand on a soapbox type of thing. But you know, when you see it from, they have leadership, they have, you know, NASCAR, this big entity, a multi-million-dollar corporation, blah blah blah, and their
yeah,
drivers will run over one another for a win. So it's like, you know, it all falls down to, you know, if you know, Logano, for instance, is willing to take somebody out for a win, you know, who's going to stop little Tinny from doing it down at our level? You know, when he
yeah,
sees what people race like that on Sunday, he's just going to, hey man, they race like that, so I'm going to race like that. It's like, man, you don't have to though. That's the thing. That's
yeah.
yep,
No, absolutely. I think that's a good point.
yep,
It's definitely. as much as you need the influence top down, you could have the negative influence top down, which is
Oh,
what
absolutely.
you're talking
Yep.
about. So, yeah,
Yep.
no, for sure.
Of course, I'm a bad host here. I asked for questions, and there was a couple in there. One's a black sand question, which I got in my head, but the other one was it was more for you. I don't know if you saw it. Struck
I
there was
didn't.
asking about torque specs on a 2020 Exodus, and I didn't know if you wanted to.
I mean, they're generic, right? It doesn't matter what card it is.
Tight is tight is tight.
Yeah, yeah. Don't kill it, but make sure it's not gonna fall apart.
Yes.
But yeah, I can look it up. I can look up the question real quick just to make
Okay.
sure context is there. And then there's a guy in here asking about how do you approach gearing when you go to a new racetrack.
Yeah.
Asking someone is typically the best that
Yep.
has an idea. So that's
That's
the
uh
best way to start.
yeah, being on the internet, going on Facebook, finding that track, I would
Hmm.
suggest they usually always have a Facebook page. Go there, ask, hey, I'm running green plate, I'm running whatever, I'm running clone heavy. Ask what a proper gearing or at least a starting ratio might be, and people aren't gonna lead you the wrong way to start. They're gonna put you in the ballpark. Hey, it's gonna be a
Yeah.
12:53 or something like that. They'll get you in the ballpark. It's not gonna, if they have a speed advantage, maybe they run a little bigger driver, then what they're not going to give you that. You could run a 12 or you could run 11. They might have an advantage if they run a 13, but they might not give you that. But overall ratio, they're going to pretty much hit it pretty close to where you're going to, come off track, hit your recall, and go, I could use a tooth or two, that type of
Yeah.
thing. And it depends on the track too, because there
Yeah.
are times when a track isn't as good, you're going to be adding teeth to get up off the corner. The better the track
Hmm.
is, the less teeth you're going to run in the rear gear. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Most people get you in a ballpark,
yep,
and if you don't trust them, ask somebody else. Because if you get
yeah,
two or three and they all say the same thing, they're going to be close, right? So
yep,
that's really the best way. Beyond that, but getting back to the torque specs or whatever, just I think it's like a 180 inch pounds is like the recommended, but nobody. I mean, it's tight, but it's not killing it. It shouldn't bond anything when you tighten the rear cassettes on any go kart. This is any go kart. It's not
yeah,
anything specific to just kinetic stuff. But if you're running a cart that has the traditional clamshell, rear cassette, they should be around 175, 180 inch pounds, not foot pounds.
yeah,
Um, which is just snug, right?
yep,
It's snug enough, but it's not killing it. The biggest thing at the end of the day, I think that question comes up and people ask because, and Harold had addressed this on the Phantom stuff because at one time, if you over tighten them, it actually would bind the bearing. The clearance in the ring and in the bearing was pretty tight at one time, and if you over
right,
tighten the PRC cassettes, they would bind. So most of the performance stuff, which is what I'm gonna say 80-90% of the go-karts have now. They run a lot more clearance, so you can even tighten them pretty tight, and they're not gonna bind up. You just
right,
want to make sure on anything it doesn't put the axle in a bind, whether that's the
yep,
cassette, the lock collar, the set screw. I mean, it doesn't matter. Like
yep,
you want that axle to just be free. You want it to be secure, but you want it to be free.
yep,
So,
absolutely. The gentleman asked about black sand, and I get this question a lot.
yeah, during
Black
the week.
sand
Yeah.
straight, the component that makes it work the best needs time to set if you're just using it straight. So at least a week out, a couple weeks is even better. But if you're wiping straight black sand, say you do 2, 3 coats on a Sunday in preparation for the next week, don't touch them. Let them set, let that absorb. The reason we cut it with Akersol is for drying time. If you wipe straight black sand on it track, it won't dry properly, and that component that makes it work as good doesn't dry down and doesn't bite in. Also, Akersol opens up the pores, allows that chemical. You're cutting the ability of the prep, but you're not, if you're wiping straight black sand on at the track, you're not getting the entire ability of the prep anyway. So it's actually the Akersol is assisting it to dry to work properly. So there's that. I know that guy asked
Yeah.
that. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, and just to give my 2 cents on it, anytime I was looking at using black sand during the week, I typically would still mix it with something for drying purposes. You can mix it
Yeah.
with AT2. Now that'll
Oh,
separate if you leave it over, a couple days or a day or whatever. But if you just mix up just enough for what you're using, you can mix it with AT2, and AT2 will act as that carrier to help dry it out and not leave it greasy. But so that's why even whenever I was using it, if we were going somewhere where I just knew the track liked it, or maybe I was making a set of tires in case the track did something weird or something like that, I would mix it with something if I wanted a set that had black sand before. I never was a huge black sand during the week person.
right.
On the Maxxis stuff, it
Yep.
was a great track prep, but we didn't have a lot of need really to use it during the
Yeah.
week. But if you're running on a lower bite racetrack, I think it's a good thing to add maybe with your weekly prep. But
Oh,
I always like the mint better during the week if I needed anything like really making bite.
yep.
um I'd use the mint or some mix with mint in it. Same
Yep.
thing. It just helped it dry.
Yeah. And if somebody has mint, you can also cut mint to do essentially the same thing as black sand does.
Hmm.
Mint, I believe, to be a little stronger of a
Yeah.
bite agent than black sand is. That again, that same whatever component that's in it. And I say
Hmm.
component because I ain't a chemist.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's and that's still a very generic question too. So
Yep.
maybe add a little context to it. And we can respond in the, uh, you know, in the comments. Me and Ben will both do what we can there. Um, Sal's asking about what to do after a big wreck. He needs some advice.
Oh
So
yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
guessing you're meaning a little bit of with the cart and a little bit mentally there, because
Yeah.
I think there's both, right? Like
Oh.
there's anytime you get in a big wreck, it's brutal, right? I mean, you tear stuff up. Typically, you're gonna be sore at best case. Worst case, you're gonna hurt yourself too. But if you're not hurt and you're sore, and you're mentally sore, mentally getting back to it when you get back, it's always going to feel a little weird that first time after you wreck. You just gotta, it's just like anything. Put the reps in, just get back at it. I would try to get back on the racetrack. Even if it's just practice for some reason, like if you can just go practice.
Yep.
As far as the cart, it's kind of the same way. Like fix everything you can, but you probably need to fix everything you can and then scale it out. If everything looks good, looks like you got everything, then go run it and see. Sometimes there's stuff that doesn't show up, until you run it and different things. It's not a perfect answer, unfortunately.
Yep. The as far as maybe on track, well, I can add this in because I was just in an altercation. The whereas in a big, kart rack on track, feel for everything. You're feeling for your wheels being down. You're feeling for when you go into the corner. How's your steering feeling? Stuff like that. Just the worst thing is when you take off and you have a flat tire or something like that, and all of a sudden, whoop, and now you're the cause of the next caution. So be aware, when that your body's where it's at. I will say that's kind of nice about the clone stuff is I can see everything now. Like when you're in a wedge, I mean, I'm sitting down and I
Yeah.
got all this around me type of thing, and it's just like you can barely see anything going on. Now I can kind of sit up and go, all right, everything's intact. Everything, look at everything. All right, everything looks in order type of thing. But I got to rescale after my little altercation because it definitely wasn't as fast. I don't know if it was because my tires got cooled off or what the deal, but we went back at it and I had to start tail, um, and it just wasn't as good. And I'm like, something might be bent.
Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah.
that happens.
Yeah. So got a couple people asking questions here in the comments, asking about tire wash working as prep. I don't.
Yeah,
It's not specifically predator racing. It's just what the racetrack's doing. When it goes dry slick, all the typical preps that we use have an element of oil in them. The oils is what makes the bite. So whenever you put an oily prep on a dry slick track, it does not bite. So the tire wash is basically just drying the surface of the tire out. So any prep that was in there, it's just taking it off the surface. Number one, as a basically a degreaser, and number two, the other chemicals in that tire wash is just drying the surface. So you got kind of want to match the surface to the tire surface. You got dry, slick racetrack. You want a dry, slick tire, for
yep,
lack of better words and explanation there.
yep,
Um,
yep. Sometimes you don't need any, you don't need anything to bite the tire up. You actually just need it clean, and
Yep.
that's blue tire wash does. It just makes it clean. Now I've had people say that they torch in blue tire wash.
Hmm. It does the same thing. All that's doing is just
Yeah,
is still eliminating more oils off the
yes,
surface of the
yep,
tire.
yep,
Yeah,
but
I burn more tire wash than probably anybody
yeah,
on
yep,
this video right here. So my days at Patriot have been long and plenty of tire wash burning.
yep,
Um, it's just you're literally just you're trying to change the surface of the tire to match the surface of the racetrack. So you
yep,
still want the ideal tire. You still want the ideal durometer. You still want the ideal amount of internal, which obviously correspond. But then you're just manipulating this very surface of the tire the same way we do whenever we go up wet. Whenever the track's soaking wet, everybody rolls prep on the tire and goes up wet. Think about it
yep,
just the opposite of that. You're just trying to pull all of that off and get it as dry as possible.
yep,
So, um, free floating sprocket. You can use the regular sprocket and float it with lock collars. That is not necessarily what a free floating sprocket is considered. That is some people do that, but most of your other free floating sprockets also have a side to side bearing variable in them,
yep,
like your Excel system. But yeah, there's several of them that just slide on the axle and then you put lock collars on it. I've never been a huge fan of them. If you've got a kinetic, which he's saying he does, it comes standard with a standard hub with a bolt in it because I've just never seen enough benefit to outweigh the risks with all of the floating stuff.
yeah,
That's personal preference. Um, Everybody can think what they want and use
I,
what they want, but
yep.
that's why I always do it.
I have a floating on mine, but it's tight.
Mm.
I get I very little walk in it, and the only reason I'm running a floating rather than standard is because it's what I have. It's
Yeah,
just I had a
and
Phantom
that,
hub sitting there.
yeah,
I slid it on, and I went, "Oh, it's a floater," and I put two lock collars on the side of it, and there's a little, and it will to an extent help your chain stay aligned, so there's no bind there. If you
yeah.
run a standard, there's a chance you could walk them off side to side
Hmm.
to whereas a floater has a tendency to keep it more centered. But I mean, it's real minuscule um,
Yeah, yeah.
in
If
my
your chain's
experience.
lined up, if your gears are good, if you take care of your stuff, you'll never have a problem with any of them. So that's my best advice.
Uh, what is
Cross
a
on a
good?
17 Recon. There you go. That's you.
Yeah.
Well,
Well, it depends on where you're racing.
yeah,
If I was
for sure.
racing this thing down in the south right now, I would have as much cross as I possibly could get in it. 65, 67, whatever that might be. It The limiting factor is how tight's that track, how much rear stagger are you running. Because the more rear stagger you run, the less cross is going to be in the cart. To whereas I don't care if anybody knows, I have 59% cross in this thing right now, and it for the track I'm running, it does not like mid 60s. It gets tight, it gets funky, it gets weird. I drop it down below 60. It's like it's on a rail. It's like I'm running an inch and a half front and rear stagger in the thing. It just works. And I'm like,
Mm,
okay. Sometimes like well, Wesley can speak to this, that a cart manufacturer will have suggestions on, hey, this cart likes this, but it's determined. Not every track is like AMS that I run. It's high banked. You have to run a lot of stagger, and it's its own animal. And I've tried to run regular numbers on it. It doesn't care for it. I've taken
yep,
out right front camber. I've taken cross out of it, and now it handles. And I'm like, okay, don't disagree with the cart, man. If you make a change and it works, don't worry about where the suggestion
yep.
is do what the chassis needs to go fast.
Yeah, and that's exactly why I don't post setups. Everybody's like always
Yeah,
mad about it, but that's why I made
yeah,
the forum. People fill it out and tell me exactly where you race, and chances are I've been there before, or I know I've at least had somebody that's been there before. And I can tell you, just like Ben said, I don't care what go kart you on. If you run more than probably 62, 63% cross at AMS, you're not going to be fast. You got to
yeah,
be on the low. You got to be on the low side there. It's just the nature of the track. Same thing when you go to Louisiana and the small tracks there. You got to run less cross. Some through Mississippi, South Georgia bull ring. Once again, it just depends. If I mean, with your definition of a bull ring, what our definition of a bull ring might be different. So
yep,
it's good to know exactly what track. People know more about tracks than they do about descriptions of tracks to
Yep.
get help. So be very specific with any questions. I'd say that's probably the number one advice I've got to anybody that's new here is try to be as specific with questions because I get questions all the time. People sending stuff in, asking about setups, asking about this, asking about that. And I specifically ask what track, what class, how big are you? Like
Hmm.
what's your build? Um and then even beyond that, it's like, they'll be like, oh, I'm on a Vulcan. I'm like, okay, well, which one? Which year?
Yeah.
Small tube, standard, you know, 3, 4 different year models. Like you got to be very, very specific
Yep.
because that will give you the best answers and the best information that you can have.
Yep. That's yeah. It's tough to answer somebody
Yeah,
who's running
Alma
Maxes.
is nowhere close to a small bull ring, by the way.
You know.
That's a big track. So,
Yep.
the
The if somebody's asking me that, I have no problem telling them I'm on 59 cross because I was on straight up burst 11s, older burst 11s with like a wipe of orange to bring them in.
yeah,
That's all I did to the tires. Nothing previous to that. So it's all dependent. And matter of fact, for lack of better term, people there don't like to run as much left as I have in this cart, and it's not. I'm running that on purpose. It's because I'm
field.
all here.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
it's me. I can't get any more over to the right. That's me. So I run 60% left.
yeah.
Okay, that's what I got.
Right. Yeah.
Yep.
But that's why I don't post general setups
Yeah.
because if somebody goes on my general setup and sees that I said 58 and they can't get it,
Yeah.
or they try to get it and they mess other stuff up, where in reality they need to be closer to 60 if you're your size, then
Yep.
that it's too competitive now to put out generic stuff. I mean
Yep.
generic information does nobody any good anymore. So
Right.
um that's for sure. If
120
small
pounds up.
guy, yeah, small.
Yep.
I mean, unless you're running junior classes, that's the other thing too. What class are you running? So, like I said, very specific questions can get you the best answers.
Yep.
Um, and I've never actually. I have rode a recon to be honest with you, not racing it, but I rode one
Yep.
after races one time just because I scuffing tires, and I was like, yeah, I'll go scuff tires. And
Yep.
anyway, so I can still help out, in giving opinions, and Ben runs a recon, so obviously he can give you opinions. But I know if you run in the South, and if you run it at Alma, if you're going to run 66 or over in any go kart, it doesn't matter what go kart you're on. I'd
Yep.
be very confident to tell you that's what's going on. 66 to
Yeah.
68, maybe even up to 70 at Alma in any go kart
Yep.
in an adult class. Um, if you're in the kids classes, then that may be different. So
Yep. I had the only thing I've run, well, not the only thing I've run down south, but the last time I ran down south was at GKK, and I think I was on my scythe, and I was at 67% on that,
mhm.
but UAS. So it's take it for what it is. And well, when I was down to Florida, I was on the Deuce, and I think I was 67 or 68% there. So high bite stuff. I just go up. It's just natural for me. It's just like, oh, high bite, whoop, and I start
Yep,
packing the cross to it. Nature of the
yep,
beast. To whereas it's low bite, you can tend to get away with a little lower cross setting. It's all track dependent though.
yep, yep. So I mean, if you're gonna run clone stock, light medium at Alma, you're gonna be running high 60s. If you go to Sickle Hill on a stock appearing small block, you might be in the lower 60s for there. So
Yep.
I would say, it's just going to depend, and it's going to depend on. I mean, you can go to Sickle Hill and lead the cross and put a ton of stagger in it, but in small block, I would say a little bit less cross isn't going to hurt you anyway,
Right.
for what that's
Yep.
worth. Difference between new frames versus a 2010. I'm guessing you're talking about a Seraph. That would have been a 2010.
Yes, I think so.
Um, Yep. 2010, 11, and 12, or half of 12. Triton came out later half of 12.
Yep.
Um, Not a ton has changed. There's still people that run Seraphs now that are competitive. Biggest thing is like,
Yep.
are all the parts straight and not wore out and bent? If you have good parts on a older cart that the frame is in good shape, um, you know, I would say anything 2000 about 10 and up is going to be fairly competitive at a local and state level. Um, The biggest thing that we've improved on, in my opinion, is just the tire window, the drivability, and the consistency. It's not that we've
Yep.
really made more speed, like outright. I would say the Seraph has had, is even to this day, has one of the biggest potential speed windows
Yeah.
in it, but it's a very narrow tire window, which made people not like it as much for the general consensus. The
Yep.
people that liked it loved it, and then everybody else was kind of like, it's kind of finicky, is what I hear. I
Yeah.
rode one. I rode one before.
Yep.
So
The Deuce was similar. Uh, Brutal fast. The fastest I've ever. Well, it was on an open
yeah.
and it was at the AMS track. Fastest lap I've ever turned there was on a Deuce. But it was inconsistent for me because I need a bigger tire window. I'm not, I'm okay with tires, but unless you're in that sweet spot,
Mhm.
just the downright speed of some of these chassis is fantastic. But I think the manufacturers caught on like, hey, yes, it's nice to have your elite guys running as fast as possible, but that's not who you sell to. You sell to Saturday Night Racer, so they would like a
Yeah.
little bigger window to where they're not having to be so tire sensitive, every single race.
Yeah. No,
Yep.
I mean, and that's been our philosophy too, right? I mean, that's everything I've tried to do, is just to make the go kart better when everything else is not perfect. That's all.
Yeah.
That's really all we work on now. The outright speed is there. It's been there. It's just a matter of like, can we be better when we're a little bit off? Can we
Yep.
be can we be second or third instead of fourth or fifth whenever we're off? That's kind
Yep.
of you know, the overall. Ooh, Stinger. I love Stingers. Oh
Oh,
wait,
yeah.
Stinger. Yeah. Well, and I mean, I wouldn't say that it don't like a dry track. It's just that the setup and or your tire program's going to need to change. Even an '08 Stinger was ahead of the curve. I mean, I had there's not many '08 Stingers out there. I had one. That's when I was driving for Studier, and so they were more kind of ahead of the times than some of the stuff '08 and before. But 2010 Icon. Yeah, I guess they did make Icons and Serifs in 2010. 'Cause I
I
know I thought '09 was the last, but they might have made them into 2010.
could be.
Um,
I I would say my opinion of the Icon isn't great, but it's not because I've ridden anything. It's
yeah,
because I've heard through the grapevine, tiny tire window, tiny
yeah, same way.
to hit it. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it's like that the Icon, and then they came right out with the Serif behind it that was even tighter, but it had more
Yeah.
speed. Like at that time, it
Yep.
was like chasing speed. Like everybody was chasing speed. So I I had an Icon. I never owned a Serif, but I did help a lot of people with Serifs at that time. I was doing a lot of tires. I wasn't doing so much like specific cart narrow minded. What did I write? I
Hmm.
was on Ultramax. But the I like the Serif when the customers I helped, especially in the kids classes, because the Serif didn't need as much cross to be fast, especially in the kid classes. The adult stuff, it was kind of like hit and miss. Like some people like 64, 66. Some people like to get it up in like that 68, 69 range. But I'd say more people were probably in that 64, 66 range on it back then. Now it
Yeah.
would be, and you got to remember too, when those go karts were built back then, we were running a totally different tire. We were running
Yeah.
we were running 800s back then. We weren't running 900s, so it's a different tire, and that makes a difference too. So, um, I think those older go karts can be competitive, like small block opens and Saturday night stuff all day long.
Mhm.
I wouldn't worry about it until I wouldn't go out and spend extra money on newer carts if you're just getting going and trying to learn. Um, you know, you want to compete in like more like clone stuff at Alma, the bigger races, all that, then yeah, I would say. And it's more of just like getting on the same page, right? It's not that it's like better
Yeah.
or worse. It's just like who are you going to go ask for help on an '08 Stinger, right? Versus
Yeah.
if you go buy something where you've got help, then it just makes it a lot easier for you to have a more consistent program.
That's That's probably the one of the probably the bigger arching thing there is that how much assistance can your cart manufacturer get you when you are running stuff that's older? It's tough to for people to remember that back that far. Hey, I was
Hmm.
on this and on that. To whereas if you have something a little more current, you can ask Wesley, you can get a hold of Phantom, you can
Hmm.
whoever it is, and be like, hey, I'm running this track, and their memory is a lot. sooner. So they're like, hey, we have people running this, this, and this. To whereas if you're running an '08 Stinger, then people are like, and I get that, from UAS, recon stuff. They're asking me, so I'll give them my setup, what I ran on it. Doesn't mean it's going to work for you, man. Because
Yeah.
like I said, down south, higher cross, I never really touched anything else except for up here, I would drop cross down into the lower 60s because on the lower bike stuff, and it would work well 60 to 63. And but again, track dependent, surface dependent, but it was a newer chassis, so I could relay that information to them to where it's something older. It's like, man, well, I get people asking, hey, I have an older trick. And it's just like, I had an older trick too, and
Yeah.
04 and an 05. And it's just like, the hell did I run on that thing? I was like, I don't know, 57 left. I don't know, like somewhere.
I
I
had an older
remember
trick
that
too.
being a low cross, 52 to 56,
Yeah.
cross type chassis. That's all I remember. But it's like,
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah,
Yep.
I would say, yeah. I mean, I still, for whatever reason, I've got like elephant brain when it comes to racing stuff, but that doesn't mean I like to think about
Yeah. Yep.
it. um, but yeah, I mean, it's easier if you got something that's like 5 years or less old. Your data set is just going to be so much bigger in the community, period, like
Yep.
anywhere. I mean, if you got something 5 years or less older, there's a chance you can find another one at the racetrack and even go
Yeah.
ask that guy, like, hey, what are you doing, or can you help me, or whatever, even if you totally don't know them, or if they're just a racer, versus anything that's like more than 5 years old. I feel like you just got a lot. Now, there's some people that get a go kart and they don't ever want to change it, and they love it, and they're competitive everywhere on it. Like back at Woodleaf, whenever Woodleaf would race every Friday night, there was this guy there. I can't remember his name. So I can remember setups and gears and tires, but I don't remember this dude's name. And anyway, he ran like a 97 inch and an eighth, like old Phoenix.
Oh, wow.
Nobody even knows what a Phoenix is probably on this show. And he would go out there on Friday night with Leaf and just fly. He was always
Yep.
good and always win. And that's just what he liked to do.
Yep.
That's what he liked, and that's what he did. He actually
That's
bought a newer go kart. Eventually, bought a newer go kart and struggled.
Yeah, yeah. That's so when I started, or well, not started, I guess when I got into opens, there was a guy that dominated at Paradise, the big quarter mile, and he was on a straight rail. And he just was wired, and he'd go out there. He had a 131 stroker. We all had 125s or even the old K30, K35s. Anyway, and he knew his setup. He knew what it liked. He'd just go out there and dominate until I went UAS racing and then started to pick up, hey, this and that, a little bit of tire knowledge. And I went out and I beat him, and he's just like, oh, I was like,
Yeah,
gotcha.
yeah,
It's tough though. It's when you get people that are wired like that, and he didn't get any slower. It just it was like, man, he's been running that chassis for so long. The ins and outs, and
yeah,
I don't disagree. Like it's going to be whenever I do change chassis or whatever it is, it's going to be hard for me to get off the recon because I know the chassis so well and know what it likes, and
yeah,
okay, this behaves like this if I do this, and it's tough to try and learn a whole new setup again. It's like, ugh, I don't want to.
yeah. Well, and,
Yep.
and that's the common thing in the racing world now. That's why you don't see kart manufacturers putting out new go karts very often, because everybody's
Yep.
kind of the same way. They're like, I didn't figure this out. I don't really want to have to relearn everything. Everybody's just refining. We're in a very much of a refining stage of our industry right now. So
Yep.
um, not uncommon. We got too many other things that we're trying to figure out. So
Yeah.
don't want to
Yep.
put any more variables than necessary. I have been to Danny's, maybe more than once. Danny's is a local track, but they have a lot of go karts, and the competition is very good. So,
Yeah.
and it's a big track. I mean, it's not small. So, I don't know if there was any context around it, but that's definitely a track that you're going to run higher cross and more left and all the things. If you're having some issues with a push in the center at Danny's, it's probably going to be your line and or your tires. um you might, I mean, there's just so many variables there, but Danny's is tough. It's a great place to go race. You learn a lot. It'll make you a really good racer. But yeah, so it's because it's a local track doesn't mean it doesn't get good, and doesn't mean you need to
Yeah.
run the
No.
higher cross stuff. It's more on size, how much grip, things like that.
Yep.
So
That's a not that it's a real big thing or anything, but I think some people they think there's a difference between your and there is between your state level, your high guys, and then your local. Like local stuff is just as fast, man. And it's just like if you take some of those elite guys, they're going to be up in the front pack, but it doesn't mean your local guy who's fast there all the time can't beat them because it's
Mhm.
the track can only go so fast, and you're not going to have skill set is skill set. If somebody's
Yeah,
wired on those local tracks, they're
yeah. He's asking about mindset of running different classes. I mean, we use multiple classes just to learn. I mean, so
yeah,
a lot of times, if when I used to go racing a lot, I would run two, three, four, whatever the pro level adult classes was. That's what I was running because I would use the earlier on classes like your regular, like whether it was medium or heavy or your
yeah.
regular classes versus your pro classes. I would use all of them just to learn, just to gather information and try to get as good as we could be for the pro class at night. And even if you just go and you run two classes, it's
Hmm.
two chances to try to learn and to do better. So
Yep.
um, I don't approach them a lot differently. If anything, if I want to try something that I'm not 100 as sure about, or I might try that in the earlier class, and then gather more data for later. The other thing is too is like you run two classes. One might be like during the day, one might be at night. So
Yeah.
you gotta factor that in as well. So sometimes
Definitely.
your decisions for the first class might not have nothing to do with it later because it's gonna go
Yep.
like especially like at Liberty, you run like stock light or and sometimes even medium. It's during the day. It's totally different because once the sun sets and you get all the way into the night running home 390 pro class, the track's way different. It done fell off a second.
Yeah.
So
Yep. That's so I ran 80 laps this past time I ran last Saturday there, 240 lap races, separate I ran 400 and then 375 after that. And even though the track fell off a little bit in 375, I was faster in 375 than I was in 400. And
mm,
I took a 10-pound lead puck off, but that back to back or not back to back, there was separation, but the track had I made adjustments for what I felt the track was going to do, and it worked. Now, my lap times went down, but everybody else's did too. So, keeping up with the track, run. That's what Wesley's saying. You can also keep up with the track if you run one class uh, and know that all right, this is more than likely. Towards the end of the run, it started to fall off. Like the more classes run on this, the track's going to fall off, or the track's going to get better, and you can kind of attempt to do something for that next run, uh, that you learned in the first one type of thing. Just,
yeah. He's saying he runs small block open and clone in the same
yep.
night. So like in that case, you kind of got to tune them to the class.
Yeah.
You'll learn over time how to be able to make that correlation, but what works in clone's not gonna work in small block and vice versa. So and if you run them on different go-karts, same thing. Like you might learn something that correlates and some things will, but for the most part, my advice is just tune to that cart engine combination and go from there. But I mean, you'll be in the ballpark, but it's not going to be the same exact thing. Your clones typically gonna want less rubber and maybe a little bit older tire versus your small block. You can get away with a more rubber and a fresher tire because you gotta have that grip.
Ooh, loose center, huh? I wish I had a loose center half the time. Usually I'm tight center. Yeah, treads are
Yeah,
oof. Treads are they're a whole different ball game, man. They're
yeah.
you wanna know my kryptonite? It's treads. And trying to figure
Well,
those things out.
and it depends on which treads too. I mean, that's the thing. I know the ones they run at Millbridge are hard as a brick versus like some of
Yeah,
these other ones people are running are not. They're soft. So,
yeah,
um, if it's loose in the center, I would say, stagger wise, what are you doing?
right.
Your numbers are in the ballpark for that type of go kart. It sounds like, but
Yeah,
there's just so many variables. Typically with treads, if you're loose, you can close the stagger up because they normally come out with a lot more stagger than the slicks do.
I do remember that. Like some of the burst stuff we used to run up here was like 2 inches rear stagger. It's like you.
Mhm. And sometimes, and if they're the softer treads, you got to run it because they'll just push if
Yeah,
not because they're so
yeah, yeah.
soft. Like the old like T11s and stuff like that, they were just so
Oh
freaking
yeah.
soft. You had
Oh,
to run a bunch of
TX11.
stagger.
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
So,
yep. Some of the
um,
faster ones too were the that they had run on such a hard track that they were buffing off and they were almost getting to the point of a slick and they'd get super
mhm.
fast about that point. And it's like, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
The mini gear stuff we had, yeah, that stagger's not crazy at all. So, yeah, it could be a mixture of things there.
yeah.
It's a hard one to figure out just through the text. But the mini gear stuff, we've talked about it several times. We kind of left the conclusion that it's really a preference. Some motor builders will prefer you to run them. Some people like them, and some people don't. And there's people that win races both ways. So
Yep.
it's kind of a preference more than it is anything. No matter how much somebody tells you that you absolutely have to have them. So
Yeah, expense wise, it's a bit to chew on. It's if you're gonna run the mini, some of that stuff gets pretty spendy, and how much you're gaining, from standard gears, and
yeah. Yeah, I see where they're posting. They're doing some money races for the because Maxis has got a tread out now, and they're doing some races with that. I don't really understand 100% what they're trying to do with it. We had this kind of discussion a couple shows ago where I think there's a place where treads make sense for some race tracks and some areas,
Mhm.
and people trying to get in the sport and just learn and not have that tire um, education,
Yeah,
but I don't, go and put $1,000 up so everybody that runs slicks will go run treads. I don't know that that's really a solution.
right. Yeah, I the Reaper race got moved up here to a track that just got built. It's going to be interesting. It's
Mm.
the Northeast shootout, I think it's called. It's $5,000 to win or something, but it just got moved to a track that, to my knowledge, hasn't had but a couple carts on it. So that's going to be, hopefully everything goes okay.
Where
It
is
may
that?
go
New
well.
York or PA?
Yeah, up in New York. Yeah, it's a track that just got built. A guy I know and I've raced, under his promotion type of thing, Clapperton, and they just built a new track, and it's just like, well, okay, we'll see about this.
Mm.
I hope the once they get the track running, uh, I anticipate going. I don't think I'm going to try and run for that $5,000 because my skill set ain't up there yet with the clone racing. But definitely once they open, I'm going to go turn some laps and see what I think about the track. Be be kind of cool. And nobody has an advantage. I'll give them that. It's a new track, but nobody has an advantage because nobody knows anything about it yet.
Yeah, yeah, that's kind of strange. Kind of strange.
I always back in the day it was they used to test tires for they used to test tires for prep, and
I was looking. I was reading something.
there
Sorry,
for a second.
I'm here. I was just reading. I can see you and hear you, but apparently you can't see or hear me.
Oh, Ben is lagging. I have full bars.
I should be
Wesley's
back now.
all right. I was gonna say
Yep,
Wesley's
Wesley's
lagging on
back.
my end.
Yeah. I
That's
guess
weird.
my Wi-Fi slowed down or something, so I just turned it off.
Oh, weird.
Yep.
That's on aluminum axles. I don't know. That's that lightning thing. I mean, if you were going to do anything, I don't know. I wouldn't play with it. I think the possibility of a failure is higher there because aluminum can, the keyways can shuck in there and strip out. And just my opinion on it. I don't, for the amount of weight you're going to save for that, I don't think it's worth it, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep. Titanium stuff, it's expensive, but stronger. Definitely. But that's, again, cubic dollars. Somebody said, go ahead.
I said I just keep everything stocked.
Wander out here. Maybe it's my internet. Up this way. Now I'm outside. There's nothing interfering.
I'm here.
Yeah, it's weird. Here, I'll wander around.
Where'd you go, Bing?
Do this.
There you go.
There, am I back?
Yeah.
Every show, there's always got to be something.
That's all right. We were about wrapping it up anyway. So.
Yep. Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, probably a good time to call it quits here. Yeah, I would love to run off my Wi-Fi, but it doesn't reach out to the barn, and then it's not that I can't do it out here, but it's just weird.
Yeah.
I'm underneath me.
Nah. I understand.
Yep.
What anything else you was thinking about for this week?
Nothing offhand. I'm gonna wait a couple weeks here. Got some family stuff going on, and then I'm gonna go to a track I've never been to before in a couple weeks here. I see tracks, the newer tracks, and I want to try and get there and experience them, type of thing, because it's not that I'm searching for a new track, type of thing, but I do miss traveling a little bit. The UAS, even though the expense of UAS is pretty big, and going 4 or 5 hours to these different tracks sucks. I would like to hit some different tracks and just experience them. So, a couple weeks here, I plan on doing that, and yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, we got a couple big races starting to come up. Midwest races, a couple weeks out. Big O's about a
Cool.
month out now. And
Yep.
so, yeah.
Yeah.
I
Eventually, I'd
was
love to
hoping
do that, but that's
yeah.
phew.
Same thing. I was hoping to be able to go this year. I went to Big O last year. I was wanting to go again, maybe go to Midwest race, but just not into budget right now.
Yeah. That's
Everybody,
tough. It's cubic dollars, man. Travel and expense and hotels and the whole.
yeah.
I'm sure you get it as much as I do. Hey, you come to this race. Hey, you come to that race. It's like, I'd love to. I'd absolutely
Yeah.
love to, but it's like,
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep, I know.
Cool, man. Well, I suppose we can call it a day for this week's episode. It's kind of good to be
Yeah, for
back.
sure. That's right. Yeah, we had the holiday, so
Yeah, I know. I was thinking yesterday. I got back from RVing, and I was like, oh wait, I got to do a dirt kart racer show tomorrow. Yeah.
yeah.
I'll
Sounds
try
good.
and be a
Well,
little better prepared next week.
that's all right. Yeah. Well, I've been so busy too, so my call tonight got rescheduled, so that's why I was able to kind of just be here the whole time. Everything was good, so I'll see what
Cool.
the schedule looks like next week. I've been getting more and more busy, so a little bit harder and
Yep.
harder, but we'll figure it out. We'll make something work. And
Okay.
yeah, everybody just post questions in the group. We'll keep answering.
Yep, sounds good to me.
Thanks, Ben.
All right, man.
Have a
See you
good
guys
one.
later.